As we get ankle deep in 2025, here are my predictions for the changing landscape of open source security, compliance, and regulation in the coming year. Let's start with some numbers about the adoption of open source software. GitHub reports more than 90% of commercial code bases contain open source components. Open source software is deeply embedded in various industries, with estimates as high as 90% of modern software solutions incorporate some open source elements. The widespread adoption brings heightened security challenges and, of course, ever-evolving regulatory demands. In the coming year, we expect a rise in targeted software supply chain attacks, a greater reliance on AI, and a stronger push for global regulatory standards promoting responsible open source practices. Let's break each of these down. Let's start with the software supply chain attacks. It all started with SolarWinds. Well, not really. It actually all started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away with what we know as the Linux kernel backdoor incident, which is widely cited as the first known software supply chain attack. But many others have followed, including the Dragonfly attack in 2014. There, of course, was the Apple Xcode Ghost attack in 2015, Equifax in 2017, CodeGov in 2020, and, as you know, numerous other attacks. The most recent was the XZ Utils backdoor attack in 2024, which really punctuated the need for more sophisticated detection techniques. The ability to detect threat actors and unusual behavior associated with commits, and also detect pattern anomalies like backdoors with every single release. Now, on January 16th, the Biden administration released expansion to the original Executive Order 14028 that was released originally on May 12, 2021. This expansion has significantly broadened the requirements for businesses to ensure security in the software supply chain and now made the software bill of materials a requirement. I've left a link below our video that covers the executive order in more detail and impacts it will have on businesses not just in the US, but around the world. My prediction is that software supply chain attacks will become ever more frequent and more sophisticated, especially in the era of AI. And that brings us to my next prediction. Artificial intelligence is going to play a major role in 2025. AI is an open source security duality. On one hand, AI offers enhanced capabilities for threat detection and anomaly detection, but also creates an advantage for threat actors to quickly build more sophisticated social engineering techniques like we saw with the XZ Utils attack. AI also creates legal risks as well. Today, developers are using AI tools to generate a lot of open source code. In fact, Microsoft, who owns GitHub and Copilot, have said that 92% of developers are using AI tools and 40% of their code is written by AI and unmodified before commit. Google has even said that 25% of their code is now written by AI, which is extraordinary in my opinion. So how will AI impact open source legal compliance? Open source compliance is where organizations adhere to legal, ethical, and technical obligations of the open source that they're using to build their applications. Ultimately, it involves understanding, managing, and meeting the requirements of licenses under which the open source is distributed. Both the US and European Union have declared that code written by AI is legally the responsibility of the party using the AI tool to create that code. So what does this mean for you? Well, if your developers are using ChatGPT, Copilot, or other AI tools to write source code, any source code that's injected into your proprietary code is subject to licenses of that open source project. This could have widespread legal implications for your company, especially if you're planning to raise a later stage capital, think B or later, or you're working towards an acquisition. All of that AI-generated code could impact your valuation, or we've seen a few cases the buyer just walks away from the deal altogether. Lastly, let's address the evolving regulatory standards. The global push for comprehensive regulatory standards is intensifying. It's aimed at promoting responsible open source practices and ensure organizations adhere to security and compliance requirements. We're seeing a lot of regulatory pressure, especially in the consumer-facing products that pose a risk of injury or death, namely the automotive industry. Consider all of the software embedded in vehicles, an extraordinary software supply chain for commercial to open source that makes it all possible. Then throw in over-the-air updates to these vehicles and the regulatory requirements to maintain a complete software bill of materials for every release, which ensures that the manufacturers aren't putting their consumers at risk. The frosting on this fun little regulatory cake is the legacy tooling simply can't keep up with the pace of deployment and leaves everyone looking for a solution to meet those regulatory requirements. We have a video specifically addressing the needs of the automotive industry and the broader issues with software supply chain security and compliance, and I'll link it below. In 2025, we expect to see considerably more regulatory pressure to improve the safety and security of products that could put consumers at risk. I mentioned the automotive industry, but think energy, electronics, software like TikTok, and other platforms from what's considered an adversarial country. They're all on the radar. These regulations are coming in 2025. If you need help getting your arms around your software supply chain security, compliance, or regulatory requirements, please reach out to us. We can help.